Something I've seen popped up over the last couple of years is this concept of people being afraid to fail. And it doesn't necessarily matter what it is they're failing at. It's more of a fact that whenever they start something new, because they're not really good at it, they just don't continue. And they see that as an utter failure. Or maybe they do everything right, but for whatever reason they don't get the desired outcome that they want. And it is ultimately seen as a failure. But in the wise words of Jake the dog, failing at something is just the first steps of being good at something. At least I think that's how he said it. And I've noticed this a lot in my own life as well. And I've come to believe that the concept of failure is not a bad thing in and of itself, but the failure to learn from your failures is a bad thing. And there have been many much smarter and more intelligent people than me throughout history who have come up with this concept of not just learning from their own failures, but learning from other people's failures. A great example of this might be in, say, military tacticians. In order to improve upon one's strategy in the armed forces and their generals, they'll often go back to battles of antiquity. And they will learn bits and pieces about how the ancient generals fought their battles, how they lost, how they could have won, how they could have done better. Like, for example, Napoleon's march into Russia with the scorched earth policy. They just kept losing more and more soldiers as they continued farther inland. And not even a couple hundred years later, the Germans did it as well during the Second World War and suffered the same consequences as a result. And there was a phrase that just keeps popping into my head, at least on a weekly basis. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And it rings true in almost every aspect of life. Because we human beings, we are cyclical creatures. And what that means is, we do things in cycles. You know, there's another expression as well where it's like history doesn't often repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And if you want to do better in this life, in whatever it is, you are better off seeing the most successful people in your given field or study or whatever it is, looking at not just their successes, but how they handled their failures, how they may have turned that failure into something better for themselves and for those around them. How do they deal with the complete and utter loss of everything? And I think it's one of the reasons why we love redemption arcs in storytelling, whether it's movies or TV or books, because these are the people that learn from their failures of losing almost everything, their identity, their family, their monetary wealth, maybe even their homes, and turning around and starting anew and building from the ground up and doing something better with themselves. And the concept isn't lost on me. Like, there have been many times in my own life that I feel like I have failed so miserably, only to learn that this failure was a good thing. These series of bad events, whatever they may be, opened up different doors for me. And I believe it's the Buddhists who have this concept of just let go. Let go of whatever happens to you. Whether it is good or bad, let go of it. And there's an ancient Chinese proverb, and it goes like this. A long time ago, a poor Chinese farmer lost a horse, and all the neighbors came around and said, "Well, that's too bad." The farmer said, "Maybe." Shortly after, the horse returned, bringing another horse with him. And all the neighbors came around and said, "Well, that's good fortune." To which the farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame the new horse and fell, breaking his leg. All the neighbors came around again and said, "Well, that's too bad." And the farmer replied, "Maybe." Shortly after, the emperor declared war on a neighboring nation and ordered all able-bodied men to come fight. Many died or were badly maimed, but the farmer's son was unable to fight and spared due to his injury. And all the neighbors came round and said, "Well, that's good fortune." To which the farmer replied, "Maybe." And the story goes on. And actually, I got it wrong. It wasn't the Buddhists, it was the Taoist. It was Taoist parable. But the story itself kind of proves a point that Failure and bad things happening, which we often link with one another, isn't necessarily a bad thing. We could have something bad happen to us, but it opens up new doors. And these doors can lead to good things. If you are willing to allow yourself to make that progress and to make that leap. And sometimes it is a leap of faith. But being able to let go of your own failures and to use it, and to see other people's failures and to use those as learning experiences in order to better oneself. I believe this is one of the most fundamental parts of being human. I mean, we are, after all, the most adaptable species on the planet, and I think because of that, it's the understanding and the awareness of learning from our own failures, and from others. So as I said, I truly believe that failure on its own is not a bad thing, but failing to learn from those failures is the thing that is bad. So if there's something in your life right now that you feel like you're failing at, you gotta ask yourself, okay, if this is going the way I think it's going, why is that? What are the things that could have been done to prevent that? What can I do now? And how do I move forward? Hopefully that makes some sort of sense. Or helps. I'm not sure. But this is just the ramblings of a strange Irishman on the internet, so, take it with a pinch of salt, but hopefully it's useful to you.